Okay, so today we are diving deep into a really dense and, frankly, disturbing set of documents. They outline a U.S. Army veteran's claims against multiple state and federal agencies. And let me tell you, it's a tangled story of alleged fraud, harassment, and one person's fight for the truth.
So let's just start with this one quote, because it's really something. This is advice that, according to the documents, an Army Reserve captain gave to one of her own military intelligence officers. You should have run or hidden from the police. It's just a shocking thing to hear, and it perfectly sets the stage for a story where the very people who are supposed to protect you allegedly become the threat.
So, who are we talking about here? The person at the center of all this is Joella Russell. Now, she's a veteran with nearly 20 years of military service. We're talking active duty, Army Reserve, National Guard, even a deployment to Iraq. But according to her complaint, she became the target of this massive coordinated campaign of exploitation from the very institutions that were supposed to have her back.
And you have to ask, what could possibly kick off such an insane, years-long ordeal for a veteran like her? Well, according to these documents, it all boils down to one single thing: a VA disability claim that Joella Russell says was completely fraudulent. Her refusal to sign it, she alleges, is what set off this whole firestorm of retaliation.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of the financial motive here. The story, as it's laid out in these complaints, really starts inside the Baltimore Department of Veterans Affairs, and it all seems to center around a plan to exploit veteran benefits.
The whole alleged scheme, when you break it down, is shockingly simple. Just 4 steps. First, you invent a crazy combat injury. In this case, getting shot in the head, even though MRIs apparently showed nothing of the sort. Second, you draft a fake disability claim based on that lie. Third, and this part is absolutely key, you assign a financial manager who's connected to the VA to take control of all the money. And then the last step, you just pressure the veteran to sign on the dotted line.
And the complaint doesn't just make vague accusations, it names names. You've got Brendan Newberry, a VA psychologist who's accused of literally inventing the injury. And there's Leah Rock, another social worker, who is supposedly set to be the financial manager in charge of the cash. And get this, 3 VA doctors are also named. They allegedly claim they had treated Joella, but she says she never even met them. The file also notes that all 3 of them resigned right around the time she was being pressured to sign that form.
So that's the scheme, right? But what happens when the target, the veteran, says, "No way, I'm not signing this"? Well, according to these documents, that's when things escalate, and a whole different set of agencies gets involved.
Well, this is where things take a really dark turn, because when Joella refused to sign, that's when, according to these documents, the VA social worker Brendan Newberry called the Howard County Police and told them Joella was a dangerous individual. And just like that, the so-called enforcement arm of this whole conspiracy was allegedly activated.
And we're not talking about one rogue officer. The complaint points fingers at people from multiple departments: Victor Broccolillo and Edward Collins from Howard County PD, Travis Bailey from Baltimore Police, and even Wayne Mullaney from the Baltimore Transit Authority. They're all accused of taking part in this harassment campaign.
And look, the accusations against these first 2 officers from Howard County, they are incredibly serious. We're talking about writing fake police reports, attempted sexual assault, and demanding $1,000 a month in extortion payments. The documents connect these actions directly to pressuring Joella to sign those VA forms and pay up.
And it wasn't just them. We see a similar pattern pop up with the Baltimore Police. Officer Travis Bailey is accused of soliciting veterans for sex and then threatening them with bogus fraud arrests if they didn't pay. It really suggests a coordinated tactic was being used across different jurisdictions.
So, you've got this pressure from official channels, right? But it didn't stop there. The conspiracy, as it's described, started bleeding into her civilian life. It escalated from harassment to accusations of property theft and, ultimately, into full-blown, large-scale identity theft.
This is where her landlords from 2022, Charles and Matthew Mader, get pulled into the story. They're accused of using their keys to just walk into her apartment and steal stuff, including, critically, her military service documents. The complaint then alleges that in December of 2024, they worked with a sheriff's deputy to have her car illegally towed, and then it just vanished.
And this is where we see the paper trail. This email, it's from the Maryland Department of Transportation, and it shows not 1, not 2, but 7 different license plates and a bunch of toll accounts that were all open fraudulently in Joella's name. As you can imagine, they racked up a ton of debt. This is the concrete evidence of the identity theft she's alleging.
And we're not just talking about a few $100 in tolls. No.
The total fraud, the total value tied to her stolen identity and car, is alleged to be $2 million.
Okay, so let's put this all together. Let's look at the timeline, because when you lay it all out, you start to see these really glaring contradictions in the official story. It's pretty incredible.
And really, the whole house of cards, the whole records issue, it all balances on one single event: Joella's forced admission to Walter Reed back in September of 2018. This is supposedly where she first crossed paths with those VA social workers who were behind the fraudulent claim.
And this right here, this is the smoking gun in the records. Look at this. For 7 straight years, from 2018 to 2025, Walter Reed's official story was, nope, no record of her, never been a patient. But then, in 2025, during a big government audit, poof, the records are miraculously found and suddenly get entered into the VA system. That kind of discrepancy is presented as a major piece of evidence of an intentional cover-up.
So when you lay it all out chronologically, the story becomes crystal clear. It kicks off in 2018 with that hospital admission. A year later, the fake claim is presented, and her refusal to sign is what allegedly unleashes years of harassment and assault. That escalates to her property and car being stolen in 2024. And then, conveniently, her missing hospital records just reappear in 2025. You can see how each event seems to build directly on the last.
At the end of the day, what these documents allege is a catastrophic failure on so many levels. And it just leaves you with this one huge question. When the official records look like they've been tampered with, and you have multiple agencies all pointing fingers, how on earth is a veteran supposed to navigate that system to find accountability, let alone the truth?